Perfect. And with that, I'll pass it off to Dan and Secrets of the Golf Whisperer.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to speak on this topic. I'm really in the development business and improving performance world. So just to frame this up, I started my business back in 1997. I was a PGA golf pro, and I still am. I traveled around the country, and I worked in Chicago, Massachusetts, Palm Springs, California. Came back to the Midwest in the early 90s, and I was teaching golf. And what I realized in my own history is that my golf game got worse as I became professional. And I used to shoot in the lower 70s, upper 60s back in high school. I played #1 guy on the golf team for 4 years. And when I went to college to a professional golf management program, what I realized is I was learning more and more about the golf swing, but my game was getting worse. And 3.5 years into it, it was like a game I didn't know how to play. I was more and more into the grip, stance, and swing, but I couldn't keep the ball on the golf course, so to speak. So I learned that there's a lot of different ways to do this, but back then, there was no coaching. There was only teaching on the grip, stance, and swing. There wasn't anything about how to focus on a target. And so throughout these years, in fact, 1997, I started the business, and then as I evolved, I changed the company name to Performance in Motion, and I had an indoor studio for 18 years. And I let go of that about 1.5 years ago to be more mobile and travel around the country with this new process. And to be able to just go in to where the company is instead of me bringing them to my office. But throughout this time, what I started to realize is how can we help people make their life easier as they get clear on their intention and how they're going to focus on their own target and goals. And I also realized is that you can have a great team, but if you don't develop them over time, they will tend to be dysfunctional as they're working somewhat together, even though we got a mobile world. If we don't keep communicating on a regular basis of goals and vision, that can get lost in a hurry. So I can also work with golfers. I'm working with Division I golfers as well, but the main focus for today is just to help you see how this can be applied to teams and companies. And it could be a sporting team, a professional team, it could be a sales team or a management team. So along the way, actually I'm just going to show you this visual of this person that's trying to learn golf. She's very defensive. She's throwing a club at a target, and her natural swing comes out. Didn't have to tell her how to do this, and here's her natural swing. And then several months later, I took her to a golf course. Her swing was there. We talk a lot about how do you provide safety and challenge in the training. Too much safety, we're fat and happy. Too much challenge, we're freaked out. So how do we provide that in the workplace? And so what I'll do oftentimes is work with the leader, find out what the main issues are and what I call language of interference, and help them start to see how they can provide this safety, because the challenge is always there for most of us. And I don't know too many people that go to work thinking that they want to do bad. I think most people want to do good in the community. Most people want to do well, provide for their families and so forth. But something happens where this interference creeps in, and it can be both internally and it can be externally. So I'm working both on the internal first, because you can see the external shows up. So all I did with this person is get her focused on a target, and then it correlated back to everything that she was wanting to work on. She became a golfer for a very short period of time. What's interesting about that story is she went to the driving range so excited. She hit the ball well in the morning, and then in the afternoon, she fell apart. She missed a few shots, and all of a sudden, her game wasn't there because she had a lot of people trying to help her with the grip, stance, and swing. No one helped her on focusing on a target. So there is no coaching if there is no target. Just a quick little example of something. I relate to kids, even though I'm working a lot with adults. This kid is frustrated. He's 2.5. His dad was trying to help him on how to swing the club. And you can see that he keeps the club away from his dad. And he's going to figure it out on himself. And this happened to me in the early 90s. When I saw this, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. He didn't have the right grip. He didn't have the right stance. But he could hit the ball. And so at that age, people are already knowing what they want to do if we just help them focus on a target. I'm just going to show you another example of someone that's not a golfer. And this happened in 97. The banker brought his daughter in, and this happened by mistake. She's swinging the club. You can see no balance there with her legs. Now she's smiling, having fun, and I have her throw the club, and her natural swing came out. And so I'm like, wow, this is just amazing how this can happen when we get focused on a target. So we often overlook our target and goals. I'm just going to bypass on a couple things. We often overlook our target and goals, and we don't allow ourselves to focus on our target and goals. So how do we do this? We do a series of exercises not only on the performance. We can do putting exercises and so forth to help people focus on a target, and they'll improve their performance without telling them how to do it. I've got a putting exercise where I have people do it 5 different ways: the regular way, eyes closed, looking at the hole, and then putt to a club. And they'll normally putt better to a club than the other ways. And certainly the regular way is the worst way because they're thinking about how to do it versus where they're going. So activity, by sitting, developing what we're working on. This is a visual image of a vision board. We use a lot of mental images to improve the performance. And then we tie it together with the goals in the vision board, and then constantly using the performance, which would be the day-to-day activities. Secrets of the Golf Whisperer. I'm really looking for is develop the business more by word of mouth. I tend to get most of my clients just through networking. And I've been on WCCO TV, WCCO radio, KARE 11. That has tended to be the best marketing, also through articles about the business. I'm looking for other ways that I could grow that as well.
Very nice idea, Dan. I like your presentation. I'm sure there's a few golfers here, but you don't have to be a golfer to have a good question. So let me bring the microphone around to you.
Can you talk a little bit more about how the coaching philosophy translates? I was a little unclear about that.
Yeah, so how we work on this is normally the business owner or the sales manager would have some kind of issue or problem that they want to achieve. And we'll go through a series of an assessment to help the individuals find out where they're at and where they can get better. And then from there, we'll do the activities to help them see how they can change real fast by focusing on what their clear intent would be.
Just to clarify, this is clearly a B2B service, correct?
Yeah.
And revenue model, what is the cost to a client to do this? Does it depend on the size of their organization?
Size of the organization and what their needs are. It can vary from $2,500 for half a day to 10, 20 grand, depending on the length and if it's a 3-month process or a shorter term process.
Does your revenue model allow for small businesses with revenues between $100,000 and $500,000?
Yes, and normally when they're beyond, 100,000, it does. What we normally do then is work with the business owner and possibly if he or she has a couple salespeople to help them grow it first.
What would the revenue be? What would your pricing be for somebody that was 100,000, 200,000 revenue?
It would be first of all, it depends on the length of time, and I can normally ask a series of questions to the owner to find out what the answers are going to be right away. I choose not to. we like to find out what the end game is first before we get involved with them. And normally can determine that pretty fast within a 5 to 10 minute conversation, to be honest with you. And from there, then we can decide, okay, who are the people that are going to be involved to help the person grow their business? And then measure it so that there's some kind of measurement in between so that we know that we're going to be successful. Yeah, there is, but there's also, like, I'll give you an example. Like when I went into General Mills, Target, different companies that I've worked with, the executive team, if they were choosing to work on it, or the management teams that I've worked with, we know where we're going with that. In a small business, there's a lot of moving parts when it's that small. So we just want to make sure that we can help them grow the business right away, because that's cash flow normally for them. So where does that tend to go is in sales, and then their office, their executive team.
Okay, so your costing and pricing is predicated on more than being able to work with more than one person at a time. How many people can you work with at a time, and what facilities do you use?
Yeah, so I use, now I go to them or I take them off site. I can be at country clubs, I can be in a space like this, now that I became mobile, where I'm not relying on my office. I'm sorry, the other question was, someone, yeah, so we've done presentations where we've had 200 people in the room. If the organization is really looking to make changes, it tends to be 8 to 15 people. It could even be lower than that. And the answer is it all group. There is from time to time roundtable, or I mean just individual needs, and that would be normally with the leader of the organization, so I can get them ahead of the game and then work with their team so that they know what we're working on.
Dan, just really interesting concept, great presentation. I was just wondering, in the last year and a half, how you've kind of taken it on the road. How do you scale this business if it really operates through you and your qualifications? I mean, are you developing a program that then can be replicated by other representatives for the business, and like, nationally, or?
The thought would be is, when I first started the business, I thought, this is years ago, back in the 90s, I thought, okay, is there room would other golf pros be able to do this, and then how do you set it up so that they don't steal it and take it and run with it and so forth. I've been told through other trainers is that because of the intuition that I have through the techniques, it'd be very hard to duplicate that through golf pros. However, business coaches and life coaches, so forth, could easily take the model that I have and use it for a half-day presentation and then run with what they're working on as well. So the Scalable could be around the country with other trainers, either business trainers or life coaches, so to speak. I'm still percolating with the two, is whether I just take it and run with it and be mobile around the country, do it myself, or if I train a couple business trainer. I would go with the business trainers and sports trainers more than probably life coaches short term. But
so this is more of a website question. Do you do anything specific? I mean, I was on it, and there's a lot going on, and a lot of content, and a lot of it's mobile, but not really.
Yeah.
Do you track that stuff? Do you do website analytics? I mean, I would imagine that people go there and then say, I'm just going to call Dan because I need, so what is that?
I really just use that website currently as almost like an extended business card, to be honest with you. I haven't worked that website. There's probably a lot of things that I can integrate, do with the website to tie into the business. Where people my clients would actually go to the website as well. I think I could work that a lot better.
I'm still not clear exactly on what you do. Would you be able to give like an example of a case study of maybe what you would do with a group or a client?
Sure. So with one organization, I took, actually he was a former North Star hockey player. He has his own business, and they were about a $4 or $5 million business. He wanted to grow his company. He recognized that they wanted to make some change, or develop his team. They really didn't do any development work inside the organization, so he took his management and his sales team together, and we went through this process. He didn't have exactly an end goal like he wanted to be X amount of $1 million later, but he wanted the team to be able to understand each other better. Through that process, though, he's almost tripled his income with the company because they now understand each other's needs and where they're all headed. And they had a target in the company, but that got redefined as they all opened up and started to develop themselves. In one case, the person was a woman in the company, and she became more confident in her sales process by doing something that she didn't think she could do and improving her performance without me telling her how to do it. So it's a lot of the work is about believing in something that you can't see to produce the end results. So that's the work that
I haven't really heard a lot of numbers. Can you
Yep.
give us that particular example? How much revenue, what your expenses were, how much you made from that particular customer?
Yeah, so the expense, because I've let go of the studio, which is almost $5,000 a month when I had that, and then I changed the business model. Now the expense is workbooks and process, so that just depends on how many people are in the program. It can range from 100 to 250 depending on the assessment that they're going through and what they need. And the other expense is really the conference room or wherever we're going to be for where we're going to be doing our work. So the rest becomes the profit of the training.
So in that particular customer, you had so many people, you generated so much revenue and your expenses. Yep. So, and how many of those events can you handle per year?
Yeah, individually, I figured it would be about 3 trainings a week, to be honest with you, where you're not burnt out or you're still spending a little time behind the scenes doing, reflecting and understanding what you're doing for the client. And an ideal scenario is you would have it balanced out between a client that you're working on a regular basis and a couple new clients that you're working on from a half-day team building to a 6-month development team in this world. Anyway.
Just a quick suggestion, and maybe it's just me. First of all, I found the presentation extremely engaging and very well done. I kept wanting to see the translation from the golf world to the corporate business world, almost like the swing improvement, the corporate improvement. And so I kept waiting for that. Maybe it's just me, but you might want to think about that.
Thank you. It's good feedback. I find because I work with so many, and maybe this is part of the business model I should change, but because I'm working with some sales teams and I'm working with some leadership teams, sometimes it is a little harder to put that all together for this presentation, but it's good feedback. I mean, relating directly and showing. The other thing is sometimes when you're getting into the company background, it's hard to, for full disclosure, it's hard to.
You are continually using the word we. How many employees? What's the company?
When I work with different companies for different assessments, I'll bring in different consultants. So that's why I say we. It is me as the business, and then I have, I utilize some people behind the scenes to do some of the writing and so forth for the website and other things. So.
Have you thought about reaching out to event planners and HR representatives from some of the bigger retail corporations in town, such as, you know, the regional Target and the regional Home Depot, and going to them and actually incorporating the fun kind of golf aspect in addition to your sales training and motivational aspects? I know I used to work for a Fortune 50 company and finding coaches that were engaging in motivational speakers that didn't make people roll their eyes and say, okay, we've got a 4-hour session that's going to take away from our work week, as opposed to maybe saying, hey, I get a 30-hour or 30-minute golf lesson thrown in there too. You know, if you could do something like that or work out an arrangement with a range or local club, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea. I certainly all the clubs, I know a lot of the pros in the area just from my background, but defining who they are is critical in the event planning world, because there are a lot of events where they might just be considered fun. And although this is a lot of fun for people to do, and I'm in that world, the learning while you're having fun is sometimes where people get confused, because even some of my clients, their staff is having fun while they're doing the activities, and they don't always know what they're learning until after they went through the program or when they're in the middle of it. So I do need to find the right event planners when I'm doing that, is what I found.
Could you explain to us as a business owner, what is your target?
Yeah, it's a great comment. So there's a financial goals that I have each year. If you're asking for that number or not, okay. So there's that, but when I first got into this, I was always very curious about how I could change people's lives, and I got into it a long time ago, because in 1997, when I started my business, I was working with inner city kids, and I was working with executives, and I found that the inner city kids were having more fun than the executives with golf. And that got me curious about what was happening there, and I was changing people's lives with the inner city kids. And I still have some calls from some of those kids that went on to play Division I golf, and they went on to be in the business world. So that's been really curious and of what that could be. But to be able to shift people's thought process to make their life easier is the main goal, and how they can focus on their target and goals without having to work so hard has been a big deal. And also helping people realize that things are going to happen in their life where there's going to be mistakes and so forth, and how they can get back focused on the targets. I don't know if that's exactly it, but
We have time for one more question.
Many times when people take a golf lesson, 2 weeks later, they've reverted back to everything they already knew, and they're back to where they were. Same thing in the corporate world. They learn a new system, and when that fails the first time, they revert back to what they know. In your pricing model, your presentation model to a corporation, a small business, whatever, have you thought about a year-long program where you have multiple visits with that site to give them booster shots along the way?
yes, even currently I'm working with one company, and my best success got me to this part of it. I was working with a company for 8 years. They were golf clients at the beginning, and then they brought their teams through, and then they were evolving, and so I just decided, let's just shift to that, where they actually went from 500 to 10 million in their process, but they were more concerned about how they could help their staff and their team along the way, and they got it. I find that I have to be really selective on those people that are interested in that work of doing that, because some people aren't, and that's okay. I think it's about maybe 60-40 of people that, they think they care about their people, but they don't, so I just got to detach and move forward on those. But it's a great point, because the tail to follow of the coaching and the development is really key. This stays in their head because they're getting up and doing activities. And oftentimes, if the person that's working in the company will take themselves out of the company because it's too painful, they see what's happening to them, and they realize that they're not having fun where they're at, and they don't enjoy it, so they find a different place to be. But it's a good point of how I develop that further, so it's clear.
Well, that's all the time we have, so let's just give another round of applause to Dan.
Thank you.